This story begins in a late evening over 2 bottles of beer. The bar was quiet, except for the low hum of conversation and the occasional scrape of a chair across the concrete floor. A single ceiling fan turned lazily above, spreading the faint smell of beer and roasted meat. Outside, the road glowed under orange streetlights as a fleet of cars drifted past. SUVs with tinted glass. Jude sat with his friend Ume at a small table near the window, 2 bottles standing between them. Their hands were rough from work, the kind of work that left dust under the nails and ache in the spine. Still, their eyes followed the passing cars with the same hunger. "Look at that one," Ume said finally, nodding toward a sleek black sedan. "You think a man can own something like that through honest labor?" Jude smirked. "Honest labor? Tell me one man who got rich that way." Uma gave a soft laugh, then sighed. "Those people must be into something dark. Rituals, fraud, something. That kind of money is never clean." Jude leaned back, watching the car's taillights fade down the road. "You are possibly right. But does money really have to be clean?" he asked. Ume frowned. "Of course it does. There's right and wrong in everything, not in money," Jude replied quietly. "Money has no morals. Whether it comes from an altar or a gutter, it's still money. It buys food, pays rent, changes how people look at you. Nobody asks where it came from once you have it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The television above the bar played a muted football match, the players moving across the screen like ghosts. Ume's expression softened. "You make it sound so easy." "It is," Jude said. "People only pretend to care about morality because they're broke. Once you have money, even your sins start to look respectable." Ume stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or argue, but the conviction in Jude's tone left little room for either. Slowly, he nodded, as if accepting something he didn't want to believe. "You might be right," he said quietly. "Maybe we've been living wrong all this time." Jude's eyes stayed on the road. Another convoy of cars swept past, bright and distant. He lifted his bottle, speaking more to himself than to Ume. "I'll make money," he said. "By hook or by crook. One way or another, I'll make it." The words hung between them, the bar lights flickering over 2 men who had just crossed a quiet line in their minds. It's been 2 months since Jude had that encounter with his friend at the bar. All through the days that followed, his resolve hardened. On the fateful evening, the rain had stopped only an hour ago, leaving the streets slick with reflection. Jude's boots left shallow prints as he walked toward a narrow building at the end of a quiet lane. The signboard above it read nothing. Only a carved symbol burned faintly into wood. The air smelled of herbs, smoke, and something older. Inside, the Ritualist's room was dim, lit by a single lantern that cast uneven light across the walls. Figures drawn in white chalk framed the corners, and somewhere behind the curtains, a soft chant murmured like a pulse. Jude hesitated at the doorway, but the man sitting behind a wooden table gestured calmly for him to enter. The Ritualist, settling on a short stool, gestured for Jude to sit before him. "What brings you to my altar, child?" Jude squatted on the mud ground, eyes on the Ritualist. "I'm tired of suffering, Daddy. I'm tired of suffering for money." "So," the Ritualist said, his voice measured. "You seek wealth?" Jude nodded. "I want to be rich, not just rich, I want to be a billionaire." The man smiled faintly, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "A simple wish? And an easy one, if you know the price?" Jude shifted his weight, hands clenched. "What kind of price?" "Nothing you cannot give," the man replied. "You will present your mother with an edible gift of your choice, something from you. It could be anything. Once she eats it, your path will open." Jude's brow furrowed. "My mother lives in the village," he said. "It's far from here. Wouldn't that matter?" The Ritualist shook his head. "Distance is irrelevant. What matters is obedience. The altar recognizes blood, not location." Jude was silent, processing the words. "So I'll have to get the food myself?" "Yes," the man said evenly. "When you are ready, bring the item here. I will sanctify it before you take it to her." Jude nodded slowly. "I understand." "Good," the Ritualist said, leaning back. "Return when the gift is in your hands. Then your journey begins." The silence that followed was deep, almost tangible. Jude's thoughts turned briefly to his mother. Her small house, her quiet prayers, the calloused hands that had once carried him through hunger. He swallowed, forcing the thought aside. "When do I come back?" he asked again, though he already knew the answer. "When the deed is ready to be done," the ritualist replied. "And come alone." Jude nodded once more. He turned to leave, his steps echoing softly on the wet floor. The lantern light caught his face, a mix of fear, calculation, and something colder forming behind his eyes. Outside, the road stretched ahead, wet and empty. And in the quiet hum of the city, Jude understood that the decision he had just made would not be easily undone. 2 weeks passed before Jude finally decided he would make the trip. The idea had lived quietly in his mind since that night at the shrine, circling him like a shadow he could not shake off. He had not seen his mother in over 5 years. There had been no quarrel, no reason he could point to, only distance and a gradual fading of concern. But now the desire that burned in him was greater than indifference. If this was what it took to change his life, then so be it. That afternoon, the sun pressed heavily over the construction site. Jude stood by a pile of cement bags, wiping sweat from his neck when Ume approached, his helmet tucked under one arm. "You look far away," Ume said. "Something on your mind?" Jude hesitated, then nodded. "I'm thinking of traveling home, to the village." Ume's eyes widened. "You? Traveling home?" He gave a short, surprised laugh. "After 5 years? What's going on? Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Jude said calmly. "I just feel like going." Ume frowned. "Now? It's not Christmas, not New Year, not even Easter. Nobody travels home this time. Did they summon you or something?" "No," Jude replied, shaking his head. "No one called me." Ume's curiosity deepened. "Then what is it? Is your mother sick, or—" He paused. "Has she passed?" Jude's voice remained even. "Nothing like that. I just want to visit, that's all." For a moment, Ume studied him, unsure what to make of the sudden decision. Jude's expression gave nothing away. It was steady and detached. "All right," Ume said finally, nodding slowly. "If you say so." "Yeah," Jude murmured. "I'll be gone for a few days. Just need to settle something." Ume looked as though he wanted to ask more, but stopped himself. There was something in Jude's tone, not secrecy exactly, but a wall that couldn't be crossed. "Safe journey, then," he said. "And greet your mother for me." Jude gave a faint smile that never reached his eyes. "I will." As Ume walked away, Jude turned back to the rising structure before him. The noise of the site carried on, but his mind was already elsewhere, tracing the long road to a village that had almost forgotten him. Evening settled quietly over Jude's small apartment. The air was still, carrying the faint smell of cement dust from his work clothes hanging by the door. On the table before him lay a half-packed bag, shirts folded without care, a few toiletries, and an envelope of cash for the road. He had delayed the call all week, but now, with the bus ticket already bought, there was no more avoiding it. He took a slow breath and dialed his mother's number. The phone rang twice before her voice came on, warm but cautious. "Jude, is that really you?" "Yes, Mama, it's me." There was a pause on the other end, a mix of relief and surprise. "Ah, my son. You remembered to call. How are you? Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," he said. "I just wanted to tell you I'll be coming home." Another pause. Longer this time. Then came the quick, uncertain laugh of a woman unsure whether to celebrate or worry. "Coming home? You? After how many years? What's the matter? Are you looking for a wife now? Maybe you want to check the village girls, eh?" Jude smiled faintly, though his eyes stayed cold. "No, Mama, it's nothing like that. I just want to visit, spend a few days." Her voice softened, but carried an edge of reproach. I'm surprised. You hardly visit. Even your brothers come often, and your sister. That one married far away, yet she still finds time to come see me, but you—" "Mama, work has been plenty," he interrupted gently. "You know how it is in the city. I've been busy trying to make something of myself." "You always say that," she replied. 5 years, Jude. 5 years without seeing your own mother. Do you know how that sounds? He let out a shallow breath, eyes fixed on the packed bag. I'll do better, he said quietly. I promise. I'll believe that when I see you walk through the door. You will, Mama. Her tone softened again, laced with emotion. All right, my son. I'll prepare something for you. Safe journey. It'll be good to see you again. Thank you, Mama, he said. I'll be there soon. When the call ended, the silence in the room returned heavier than before. Jude sat for a moment, phone still in his hand, the echo of her words lingering in the air. He had lied smoothly. So smoothly it almost sounded true. But behind the easy tone and hollow promises, he knew the truth that drove him. He wasn't going home for love or reconciliation. He was going to complete what he had started. The task that would, if all went well, change his life forever. He zipped the bag shut and looked toward the window. The night outside was still, the city lights faint in the distance. Somewhere deep within him, a small nervousness stirred, one he quickly silenced with a single thought. By hook or by crook? The following evening, Jude returned to the Ritualist, this time with a single loaf of bread, fresh and warm. The Ritualist sat at his low table, his calm presence filling the silence. You have brought it, the man said, his tone almost approving. Yes, Jude replied, placing the bread on the table. I leave for the village tomorrow. The Ritualist nodded slowly. He unwrapped the loaf and examined it briefly before setting it in the center of the table. Then, without another word, he reached for a small bowl of powder and began to murmur under his breath. The rhythm of his chant grew steadier, his fingers tracing invisible signs over the bread. The air seemed to thicken, the faint hiss of burning incense filling the room. When he stopped, the silence that followed felt as if the room itself were listening. It is done, the Ritualist said quietly. Your mother must eat this bread within 24 hours of your arrival. Not a minute later, Jude nodded, his face expressionless. She will. You must not share it with anyone, the man continued. It is meant for her alone. Once she eats, your path will open. Jude looked down at the loaf, now wrapped again in its original paper, as if the ritual had left no trace. I understand. Good, the Ritualist said. Travel safely. Return to me when it is finished. Jude picked up the bread, his hands steady though his chest felt tight. I will. As he turned toward the door, the man's voice followed him softly. And remember, hesitation breaks the bond. Do not let sentiment delay you. Also, what promises to give will strike if disappointed. Proceed now and do not fail. Jude paused for a moment, then walked out without replying. Outside, the evening had deepened into full darkness. He stood for a while, staring at the faint lights of passing cars before heading home. By morning, he would be on the road. Not to visit, but to sacrifice. Jude arrived at the village in the late afternoon, tired but composed. The bus dropped him by the dusty junction where children played around a half-broken signpost. From there, he walked the rest of the way, his small bag slung over one shoulder and a paper bag balanced carefully in his hand. When he reached his mother's compound, the gate creaked open to the sound of her voice, surprised, half joyful, half uncertain. "Jude, my son!" she called, coming toward him. He smiled faintly, lowering his bag. "Good afternoon, Mama." Neighbors soon appeared, women from nearby compounds, a few children, and an old man who remembered him from years before. The air filled with chatter and laughter, curious questions, and that warm excitement that greeted a long-absent child. "Ah, see how you've changed," one of the women said. "City life has fed you well." Jude laughed politely, offering smiles where they were expected. He brought out a few small items from his bag. Biscuits for the children, a few gifts for neighbors. He handed them out easily, almost mechanically. But through it all, the paper bag holding the bread remained untouched at his side. When the small crowd departed and the compound grew quiet, with the last of the children drifted away, his mother began clearing the veranda. "Let's go inside," she said. "You must be tired from the road." He followed her in. When they sat down, Jude reached inside his bag. First, he brought out a wrapper and gave the mother. "Mama," he said, his tone low and deliberate. "I bought these for you. I hope you'll like the wrapper." She looked at him, curious. "For me? I will wear this your own wrapper on Sunday. Thank you, my son." Then Jude removed the loaf from inside the nylon and placed it on the small table between them. "This one is just bread," he said, forcing a casual smile. "But I wanted you to have it." His mother's face brightened. "Ah, my son, you thought of me like this? Thank you. It's nothing," Jude said. "Just make sure you enjoy it. I don't want anyone else touching it," she chuckled softly. "You talk like a child guarding his sweets. Don't worry, I'll eat it all." She took the bread carefully, almost ceremoniously, and stood. "Let me keep it in my room for now," she said. "I'll eat later after I finish tidying up." "All right, Mama," Jude murmured, watching her disappear into the small corridor with the loaf in her hands. When she was gone, he sat back in silence. For a moment he thought he could hear a muffled cry outside. Then the silence returned. Then his gaze lingered on the doorway through which his mother had gone. His expression was part relief, part dread, and beneath it all, a cold stillness that came from knowing the moment he had prepared for was finally in motion. When night came, it felt rushed in Jude's mind. From the small kitchen came the smell of soup, pepper, fish, and smoke mingling in the air. Jude and his mother sat on low stools by the dining table, the lantern between them humming faintly. She served his portion first, smiling as she placed the steaming bowl before him. "You must be hungry after the journey," she said. "I'm fine, Mama," Jude replied, forcing a smile. He ate slowly, eyes occasionally shifting toward the narrow corridor that led to her room. The thought of the bread pressed at his mind, urgent. After a while, he cleared his throat lightly. "Mama," he said, trying to sound casual. "Did you eat the bread I brought?" She looked up from her plate, surprised. "The bread? No, not yet. I kept it in my room. I was too busy tidying up. I'll eat it tomorrow." Jude's hand paused on his spoon. A faint pulse of alarm ran through him. Tomorrow. That would be too late. The ritualist's words echoed in his head. Within 24 hours. He swallowed hard and forced his tone to stay gentle. "You should try to eat it tonight," he said softly. "It's fresh and it tastes really good. Bread like that doesn't keep for long." His mother smiled, amused by his insistence. "You and this bread," she said. "All right, I'll eat it later before I sleep. Are you satisfied now?" Jude managed a laugh, though it came out thin. "Yes, Mama, I just wanted to be sure you enjoy it." They returned to their meal, but his appetite had gone. He watched her across the table, her movements slow and familiar, her face lined with years of care. Guilt brushed at the edges of his thoughts, but he pushed it down. Remembering the promise, the urgency, the future he had been promised. When the dishes were cleared and the lantern dimmed, his mother stood, stretching slightly. "Good night, my son," she said warmly. "It's good to have you home." "Good night, Mama," Jude murmured. He watched her walk away toward her room, the room where the bread waited. And long after the door closed, he remained seated, still, his mind counting down unseen hours. The first light of morning crept through the cracks in Jude's window. He was already seated on the edge of his bed, scrolling absently through his phone. He wasn't reading anything in particular, just trying to keep his mind from wandering back to the thought of the bread, whether the mother finally ate it. The night had felt endless, every sound amplified by waiting. A soft knock came on his door, followed by his mother's familiar voice. "Jude, are you awake?" "Yes, Mama," he said, slipping the phone aside. The door opened gently, and she peered in with a smile. "Good morning, my son. You slept well?" "I did," he replied, forcing calm into his tone. She nodded. "I was thinking of making tea for breakfast. The weather is cool this morning." At the mention of tea, Jude's chest tightened. Tea? And the bread? The thought struck fast, unsettling. Trying not to show it, he gave a short nod. "Tea is fine, Mama. That's a good idea." She smiled again. "Then I'll make enough for both of us." But Jude raised a hand lightly. "No, don't bother about me. I'll pass this morning. I'm not too hungry." She paused in the doorway. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said quickly. "But—" He hesitated, then continued. "You should have yours. Make the tea and take it with the bread I brought. It'll even taste better that way." The words came out too quickly, and she caught the urgency in his tone. Her smile lingered, but her eyes narrowed slightly with curiosity. "This bread again," she said with a soft laugh. "You've mentioned it so many times since last night. Did you bake it yourself?" Jude chuckled awkwardly. "No, Mama. I just want you to enjoy it while it's still fresh. It won't be nice if it goes stale." She looked at him for a long moment, not suspicious, but thoughtful. Something in her son's insistence felt unusual, though she couldn't quite place why. "Well, if you say so," she said finally. "I'll eat it with the tea then." "Good," Jude said quietly, lowering his gaze. She gave him one last glance, her eyes soft but puzzled, before turning and walking away. When his mother left the room, closing the door behind her, Jude remained seated on the edge of the bed, his thoughts turning in restless circles. He could tell she still hadn't eaten the bread. Not last night, not yet this morning. A cold restlessness settled in his chest as he checked the time on his phone. 16 hours since he arrived. The Ritualist's instruction echoed in his mind like a ticking clock. Within 24 hours, only 8 hours remained. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the countdown pressing against his patience. Every passing minute without certainty felt like a thread tightening around his neck. But then the earlier conversation replayed in his mind, her mention of tea for breakfast. The thought eased him. Yes, he reasoned silently. She'll eat the bread with the tea. She said she would. The image of her quietly pouring tea and slicing into the loaf calmed him. He exhaled, stood, and reached for his sandals. "By the time I return," he muttered to himself, "it'll be done." Jude had just slipped on his sandals and reached for the door when his mother appeared from the corridor, her wrapper tied firmly around her waist and a small towel resting on her shoulder. She looked surprised to see him already dressed. "You're going out this early?" she asked. Jude turned, masking his restlessness with an easy smile. "Yes, Mama. I just want to look around, see the village a bit. It's been a long time." She nodded, leaning against the doorway. That's good. Things have changed since you left. You'll hardly recognize some places." "I know," he said. "I'll be back soon." He hesitated, then added, "And Mama, don't forget to make the tea. You should take it with the bread I brought for you." She gave him a small smile, though there was a flicker of something questioning in her eyes. "You and that bread again," she said softly. "Don't worry, I'll eat it." "Good," Jude replied. "It'll taste better that way." She nodded, adjusting her towel. "All right then, just don't stay out too long. The sun is fierce these days." "I won't," he said, reaching for the door handle. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Hers gentle and unsuspecting, his steady but distant. Then he stepped outside, closing the wooden door behind him. Outside, the morning air met him with warmth and the smell of fresh earth. The village had begun to wake up loudly. Jude walked slowly down the narrow lane, his face calm, his thoughts anything but. Inside, his mother lingered for a moment at the door, watching him disappear around the bend. She shook her head lightly, half smiling to herself. "Strange boy," she murmured, then turned back toward the kitchen, unaware of how much weight his casual reminder carried. It had been nearly half an hour since Jude left. The compound had grown quiet again. His mother moved through her chores slowly, sweeping the veranda, rinsing a few plates by the outdoor sink, tending to the small garden by the fence. But through it all, her thoughts refused to settle. She tried to focus on the work, but Jude's words from earlier, his repeated reminders about the bread, echoed in her mind like a whisper she couldn't silence. Why was he so insistent? At first, she brushed it off as simple affection. Maybe he had missed her and wanted to spoil her a little. But the more she turned it over in her mind, the stranger it began to feel. Jude had never been the sentimental kind. For years he hadn't called, hadn't visited, hadn't sent much home. And now, suddenly, he couldn't stop talking about that bread. She stopped sweeping, resting the broom against the wall. The troubled thought that had crept into her mind since morning began to take shape. Could there be something wrong with it? She shook her head immediately. No, she murmured to herself. He's my son. But the doubt stayed. It clung to her like smoke. After a long moment, she decided she couldn't bear it anymore. She went quietly into her room, took the loaf from where she had kept it wrapped in a cloth, and placed it on the table. The bread looked harmless, fresh, golden, perfectly ordinary. Still, her hands hesitated over it. She cut a small piece, just enough to test her suspicion. Then she walked out toward the small goat barn behind the house. The animals moved about, excited at her presence, bleating softly as she approached. She crouched by the pen and tossed the piece of bread toward one of the goats, a brown one that usually came first to her call. The goat sniffed at it, then began to chew. She watched quietly, her heart beating a little faster than usual. When it finished, she waited a while longer, leaning against the wooden rail, eyes fixed on the animal as if watching for a sign. But nothing happened. The goat moved away, chewing lazily, its tail flicking flies aside. Satisfied, or perhaps trying to be, she straightened up and dusted her hands. If there's nothing in it, she muttered softly as she returned to her chores, then the goat will be fine. It's been 2 hours since she returned to her chores. The sun now stood higher in the sky. Jude's mother had finished sweeping, washing, and tending to the small patch of vegetables behind the house. She was wiping her hands on her wrapper when she remembered the goat. Something inside her tightened. Not fear exactly, but a need to be more certain, to silence the discomforting thoughts. She made her way toward the barn, each step slow. When she reached the pen, she froze. There, lying motionless on the dry floor, was the brown goat, the same one that had eaten the piece of bread. White fumes hung faintly around its mouth, the body stiff and twisted at the neck. Her breath caught. For a long second, she couldn't move. Then her hand flew to her mouth, suppressing the instinct to scream. The sound died in her throat, replaced by a trembling silence. She crouched beside the animal, staring at it, the truth washing over her in waves. Disbelief, horror, then a cold, quiet understanding. The bread wasn't ordinary. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She forced herself to stand, her knees weak, her body shaking. Then, with a kind of desperate steadiness, she dragged the goat by its legs to a shaded corner behind the barn and covered it with a sack. When she straightened again, she stood for a while in stillness, trying to steady her breathing. My own son, she thought, her mind refusing the words even as they formed. After a few minutes, forcing herself to think clear, a simple plan formed in her head. She walked to the neighboring compound, her voice calm but distant, as she greeted the men sitting outside. "Good morning, my brothers," she said. "Please, I might need your help later, maybe around late morning, just to move something for me." "Ah, Mama Jude, no problem," one of them said cheerfully. "We're here." She thanked them and turned away, her face composed. Back in her compound, the air felt different, charged with quiet purpose. She entered the kitchen, set water to boil, and began to make tea. She took out the same loaf of bread, cut a few thick slices, and arranged them neatly on a plate. The same bread, the same one her son had been urging her to eat. When she was done, she carried the tray into the parlor and set it carefully on the small wooden table in the parlor. The tea steamed softly beside the bread, the scent faint and harmless. She stood there for a moment, her gaze fixed on the table. Her thoughts were simple, not loud, not angry. If the bread is clean and he knows it's clean, she told herself, then he wouldn't be worried about eating it. But if it isn't, her eyes watered, and she wiped it clean. She looked toward the doorway where the sunlight poured in. Somewhere down the road, Jude would soon be walking back. She turned, straightened the chairs, and waited. It didn't take long after the breakfast was served, and Jude returned. His shirt clung to his back with the heat, dust clinging to his sandals as he stepped into the compound. When he entered the parlor, he paused. On the small wooden table sat a tray, a cup of steaming tea beside a plate of neatly cut bread. For a moment, his heartbeat quickened. He turned toward the hallway. "Mama!" he called out. Her voice came faintly from the other room. "Yes, my son?" Jude's tone hardened slightly. "You haven't eaten your breakfast? Why is it still here?" From the other room, she replied calmly, "That one on the table is for you. I haven't eaten yet." He stood still, his jaw tightening. The words struck him wrong. "For me?" he repeated. "Why haven't you eaten the bread I brought? What are you waiting for?" There was a pause before she answered. "I thought we could share it," she said. "You bought it, after all." Something inside Jude snapped faintly. His voice rose, sharp and defensive. "Mama, I told you that bread was for you. Why are you making this difficult?" From the doorway, she appeared, calm, composed, her wrapper tied firmly, her eyes steady on him. "And I told you," she said evenly, "that I'd like you to eat with me. Is that too much for a mother to ask?" Jude's face hardened, anger rising to mask the panic in his chest. "I said I don't want tea and bread. I'm not a child." Her voice remained quiet but firm. "Just sit, my son. Take one piece. We'll eat together." "I said I'm not interested," Jude barked. His hands were trembling now, his breathing shallow. "Why are you insisting?" "Why are you refusing?" she countered softly. The question hung between them, heavy and unspoken in its meaning. Their eyes met, and in that long, wordless stare, the truth began to take form. Fragile, undeniable. Jude's lips parted, but no words came. He took a step forward, anger spilling into desperation. "Mama, don't test me!" Before he could move another inch, her composure broke. She threw her head back and screamed, a full, piercing cry that tore through the quiet house and carried into the compound. "Help! Somebody help me!" The sound rang out again and again, shaking the stillness of morning. Pots clattered in nearby compounds. Footsteps hurried. Voices began to stir. Jude froze where he stood, his chest heaving, eyes wide. The sound of his mother's cry burning through him louder than any word he could have spoken. Outside, neighbors were already running toward the house. The sound of her scream had barely faded when the first footsteps thundered through the gate. Within minutes, 4 men, the same neighbors she had spoken to earlier, burst into the parlor, followed closely by others drawn by the commotion. The scene met them like a still photograph of tension. Jude standing by the corner of the table, his fists tight at his sides. His mother standing opposite him, the tray of tea and bread between them. "What is happening here?" one of the men demanded, his voice breathless from running. Before Jude could speak, his mother's words came fast and firm, tumbling one after the other, as though she had rehearsed them in silence. "Ask him," she cried, pointing at Jude. "Ask my son what he brought home to me yesterday. Ask him why he's been forcing me to eat that bread." "Mama, stop!" Jude snapped, his voice shaking. But she didn't stop. She turned to the men, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice clear. "Yesterday evening, he came back with that bread. He said I must eat it. Said it was for me alone. When he kept insisting, I began to feel something wasn't right. This morning I fed part of it to one of my goats." She swallowed hard, then continued, "The goat is dead. I found it lying in the barn, white foam all over its mouth." The room went still. All eyes turned to Jude. His face was pale, his jaw set in tight denial. But no words came out. One of the men stepped closer. "Is this true?" Jude shook his head quickly. "No, it's not what you think. I don't know what happened to the goat. Maybe it ate something else." Another man pointed to the bread. "Then eat it. If nothing is wrong with it, prove it." "I said I'm not hungry," Jude barked. The men exchanged looks. Their tone hardened. "You've been telling your mother to eat it. Now you eat it." Jude backed away a step, his chest rising and falling. "I said no!" The quiet that followed said everything. No more explanations were needed. The truth had found its way through the silence. From outside, the noise of gathered voices grew louder. Villagers arriving, murmuring, pushing closer to see. Children stood by the windows, women whispering at the door. The small house, moments ago calm and ordinary, had become the center of something that words could no longer contain. Jude looked toward the door, toward the growing crowd. But the men blocked his way. His mother stood behind the table, her eyes wet, yet unwavering. The bread still lay between them, untouched, waiting, the silent witness to everything that had just been revealed. The parlor could no longer hold the crowd. Within minutes, word had spread through the village. Jude, the son who returned after 10 years, had tried to kill his mother. The noise outside grew into chaos. Youths from the neighborhoods rushed in, their voices sharp with anger, their faces hard with disbelief. Before the older men could stop them, they seized Jude, dragging him out into the open yard. "Murderer!" someone shouted. "Your own mother?" another cried. Jude struggled, shouting that it wasn't true, that it wasn't what they thought, but his voice was drowned beneath the fury of the crowd. Fists and sticks fell on him, a blur of blows and noise. He tried to cover his face, to speak, to defend himself, but the words never formed. In the midst of it, his mother stood by the doorway, trembling, not moving forward, not retreating. Tears ran down her face, silent and steady. "Tell them," one of the youths demanded. "Tell them why you brought the bread." Jude's voice broke between gasps. "It was for money," he cried out. "They told me to do it. The Ritualist. He said I'd be rich." A hush fell over the crowd, broken only by the sound of his labored breathing. The truth had finally come out, but no one spoke. Even the breeze seemed to stop. Then, somewhere in that heavy silence, the hour struck. The 24th hour since Jude had arrived home. He froze suddenly, his body jerking once, then twice. His mouth opened, but no sound came. His eyes darted wildly, seeing nothing, his face twisting with a fear no one could understand. He staggered backward, clutching at his head, a guttural cry rising from his throat. The men stepped back, startled. The anger that had filled the yard moments ago turned to confusion, then horror. Jude fell to his knees, shaking, muttering words that made no sense, words that spilled into screams. And then he began to laugh. A strange, hollow laughter that echoed through the compound and into the open road. By evening, the entire village knew. The ritual he had begun had found its end. Not in his mother, but in himself. The unfulfilled sacrifice had turned back on the one who sought it. His wealth never came. Only madness did. And to this day, they still speak of him, the boy who returned home after 5 years, trying to use his own mother for money. The boy who lost his mind before he could find his fortune. Now, when children pass by the old tree near the stream and see a man muttering to himself, they lower their voices. Because that man, they say, is Jude.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel to encourage us to make more. Also, hit the bell icon to get notified when new stories drop.